She never imagined that a simple wrong turn inside the hotel where she worked would change the course of her life forever. It was one of those days that seemed endless, the kind where your feet hurt before your shift even begins, where the hours stretch like taffy and every muscle in your body begs for rest. Emma had been working double shifts for 3 weeks straight, picking up every extra hour she could, covering for colleagues who called in sick, staying late when the front desk needed help with the overnight rooms. The money was necessary. More than necessary. It was survival. The Grand Lexington Hotel stood like a glass giant in the heart of Manhattan, 52 floors of luxury that catered to people whose weekly spending exceeded what Emma made in a year. She had worked there for 2 years now, moving silently through hallways lined with art that cost more than her childhood home, cleaning rooms where guests left $100 tips without a second thought. She was invisible to most of them. Just another brown uniform, another face they would never remember. And that was fine. Emma preferred it that way. Invisibility meant safety. It meant no questions, no complications, no one looking too closely at the girl who worked 3 jobs and still barely made rent. That night, exhaustion had dulled her senses. She had just finished cleaning the 18th floor, her cart loaded with fresh linens and miniature bottles of shampoo that probably cost more per ounce than champagne. The night supervisor had called her over the radio, voice crackling with static, asking her to check on the presidential suite. A last-minute request. Someone important had checked in late, and the previous staff had apparently missed a detail. Emma sighed, her lower back protesting as she pushed her cart toward the elevator. The presidential suite was on the top floor. Of course it was. When the elevator doors opened on the 52nd floor, the hallway that greeted her was different from the others. Quieter. The carpet was thicker here, swallowing the sound of her footsteps. The lighting was softer, more intimate. There were only 2 doors on this entire floor, 2 massive suites that cost more per night than most people made in a month. Emma checked her keycard, glanced at the room number scribbled on her notepad, and approached the door on the left. She swiped the card. The light turned green. The lock clicked open. She pushed the door inward, already rehearsing her apology in case the guest was inside. But the suite appeared empty. The lights were dimmed, casting long shadows across furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city that took her breath away, even after 2 years of seeing it. Manhattan stretched out below like a carpet of stars, the streets alive with traffic and light, and the endless pulse of human ambition. For a moment, Emma forgot why she was there. She just stood, staring at that impossible view, feeling impossibly small. Then she heard the water stop. Her heart jumped into her throat. Someone was in the bathroom. She had walked into an occupied suite. Panic flooded her system. She turned, ready to bolt, ready to apologize and disappear before whoever it was emerged and complained to management. But before she could take 2 steps, the bathroom door opened, and everything stopped. He stood there, framed in the doorway, his upper body completely bare. Water still clung to his skin, droplets tracing the lines of his shoulders, his chest, the ridges of muscle that spoke of discipline and control. His dark hair was wet, pushed back from his face, and his eyes were the color of steel. He was tall, impossibly tall, with broad shoulders that seemed to fill the doorway. There was something almost sculptural about him, like he had been carved rather than born. But it was not his body that made Emma freeze. It was his expression, or rather the complete absence of one. He did not look surprised. He did not look angry. He simply looked at her, his gaze steady and penetrating, as if he could see through her uniform, through her skin, straight into the parts of herself she kept locked away. And for a long moment neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled taut, humming with tension. Emma found her voice first, though it came out smaller than she intended. "I am so sorry. I thought this was the other suite. I will leave right now. I did not mean to intrude." She turned toward the door, her hands shaking, her face burning with embarrassment. But then his voice stopped her cold. "Stay where you are." It was not loud. It was not a shout, but it was absolute. The kind of voice that expected obedience without question. The kind of voice that had never been told no. Emma froze, her hand on the door handle, her heart hammering in her chest. She did not know why she obeyed. She should have left. She should have run. But something in his tone, something in the way he looked at her made her stay. Slowly, she turned back to face him. He had not moved. He was still standing in the bathroom doorway, still shirtless, still watching her with that unreadable expression. But now she could see something else in his eyes, something that looked almost like curiosity, or maybe loneliness. She could not be sure. "What is your name?" he said. It was not really a question. It was a demand wrapped in the syntax of polite inquiry. "Emma," she said quietly. "Emma Torres." He nodded once, as if filing the information away. Then he took a step forward, and Emma had to fight the urge to step back. There was something predatory in the way he moved, something that reminded her of a wolf circling its prey. But there was also something broken in his eyes, something wounded and raw that made her heart ache in a way she did not understand. "You are not supposed to be here," he said. "I know. I am sorry. I made a mistake." "No," he said, and there was the faintest hint of something in his voice now. Something that might have been amusement or irony or pain. She could not tell. "You did not make a mistake, Emma Torres. You opened exactly the door you were meant to open." She did not know what to say to that. It sounded cryptic, almost theatrical, like a line from a movie. But the way he said it with such certainty, such weight, made her believe that he meant it. That somehow, impossibly, he believed their meeting was not an accident. "I should go," she said again. But she did not move. He studied her for another long moment, and Emma felt exposed under his gaze, like he was reading every secret she had ever kept, every lie she had ever told herself. Then finally he nodded. "Yes," he said. "You should." But as she turned to leave, as her hand touched the cool metal of the door handle, he spoke again. "Emma." She paused, not looking back. "I will see you again." It was not a question. It was a certainty, and deep in her chest, Emma felt something shift, something that felt like fear and excitement and inevitability all tangled together. She left without another word. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. She moved through her tasks mechanically, her mind replaying the encounter over and over. Who was he? Why had he looked at her like that? And why, despite her better judgment, did she want to see him again? It was not until she clocked out and checked her phone in the employee locker room that she got her answer. One of her co-workers, Maria, was scrolling through a gossip website, and there on the screen was a photo of the man from the suite. He was stepping out of a black car, his face set in the same unreadable expression he had worn when he looked at her. The headline read, "Mysterious billionaire Adrian Wolf checks into Manhattan hotel, refuses all interview requests." Emma felt her stomach drop. Adrian Wolf. She knew that name. Everyone knew that name. He was one of those rare figures who seemed to exist outside normal society, operating by his own rules, answerable to no one. The articles about him were always contradictory. Some called him a genius. Others called him a tyrant. Some said he had built his fortune through brilliance and innovation. Others whispered about ruthless tactics and destroyed competitors. But everyone agreed on one thing: he was impossible to know, impossible to reach, impossible to understand. And she had just stood in his suite, watched water drip from his hair, heard him say her name like it meant something. Maria looked up from her phone and caught Emma staring at the screen. "Girl, can you believe this guy?" She shook her head. "They say he does not even smile, not ever." "What kind of person does not smile?" Emma did not answer. She grabbed her bag, mumbled a goodbye, and headed for the subway. But all the way home, crammed into a train car that smelled like sweat and recycled air, she could not stop thinking about him. About the way he had looked at her. About the loneliness she had seen hiding behind that steel gaze. About the way he had told her, with absolute certainty, that he would see her again. She told herself it did not matter. That it was just a weird moment, a strange encounter that would fade into the background noise of her chaotic life. But that night, lying in her tiny studio apartment with the sounds of the city bleeding through her thin walls, Emma could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him, standing there, looking at her, seeing her in a way that no one else ever had. And despite every ounce of common sense she possessed, despite knowing that men like Adrian Wolf were dangerous, that they consumed people like her without a second thought, Emma felt something stirring in her chest, something that felt dangerously like hope. The next day, she arrived at work expecting everything to return to normal. But normal, she was learning, was a luxury she no longer had. Her supervisor pulled her aside before her shift started, her expression tight with something that might have been concern or might have been warning. "Emma, you are being reassigned." "What?" Emma felt her stomach twist. "Why, did I do something wrong?" "No," the supervisor said, but she did not sound convinced. "You are being moved to the executive floor. Permanent assignment. You will be responsible for maintaining the presidential suite and the penthouse level for the duration of Mr. Wolf's stay." Emma's heart stopped. "You are putting me on his floor?" "It was requested specifically," her supervisor said, and now there was definitely something like warning in her tone. "By him, he asked for you by name." The words hit Emma like a physical blow. He had done this. He had moved pieces on a board she did not even know she was playing on, had reached into her life and rearranged it to suit his needs. And she had no say in it, no choice, no control. That was when the anger came. Hot and bright and clarifying. She wanted to refuse. She wanted to march up to that suite and tell him exactly what she thought of powerful men who treated people like chess pieces. But she also knew that refusing meant losing her job. And losing her job meant losing her apartment. And losing her apartment meant ending up back where she had started, sleeping on her cousin's couch, feeling like a burden, feeling like she was drowning. So she did not refuse. She took the new assignment. She pushed her cart onto the 52nd floor and told herself that she would simply avoid him. Do her job. Stay invisible. Survive. But Adrian Wolf, she was beginning to learn, did not allow people to avoid him. The first time she saw him after that night, he was standing by the window in the suite, fully dressed this time in a suit that probably cost more than her car. He did not turn when she entered, but she knew he had heard her. She could feel his awareness of her like static electricity in the air. She worked quickly, efficiently, changing the linens and restocking the minibar, trying to pretend he was not there. But every movement felt magnified, every sound too loud. She could feel his presence like a weight pressing down on her, and she hated it, hated him for doing this to her, for making her feel small and powerless and painfully, impossibly aware of him. She was almost finished when he finally spoke. "You are angry with me." It was not a question. Emma's hands stilled on the pillowcase she was smoothing. She did not turn around. "I do not know what you mean," she said, keeping her voice carefully neutral. He made a sound that might have been a laugh, but there was no humor in it. "You are lying." Emma's jaw tightened. She finished with the pillow, placed it precisely on the bed and turned to face him. He was watching her now, his expression as unreadable as ever, but there was something in his eyes, something that looked almost like satisfaction. "Is there anything else you need, Mr. Wolf?" she said, making his name sound like a title, like a barrier. He tilted his head slightly, studying her. "Yes," he said. "I need you to stop pretending you are not here. I'm just doing my job." "No," he said, taking a step closer. "You are hiding. There is a difference." Emma felt her pulse quicken. She wanted to argue, to deny it, but the words stuck in her throat because he was right. She was hiding. She had spent her whole life hiding, making herself small, trying to disappear into the background. It was safer that way, easier. But this man, this impossible, infuriating man, refused to let her hide. "Why did you ask for me?" she said, and she hated how her voice shook. "Why did you have me reassigned?" He was quiet for a long moment, and Emma thought he might not answer. Then he said very softly, "Because when you looked at me that night, you did not see what everyone else sees." "What do you mean?" He moved closer still, and now Emma could smell him, something clean and expensive and utterly masculine. "Everyone else looks at me and sees a monster," he said. "Or they see money, or power, or a tool they can use to get what they want. But you looked at me and saw a person." Emma's breath caught. She did not know what to say to that, did not know how to respond to such raw honesty from a man who was supposed to be made of stone. "I'm not special," she said finally. "You do not know me." "No," he agreed, "but I want to." And there it was. The truth laid bare between them. He wanted her. Not in the way powerful men usually wanted women like her, not as a conquest or a distraction. He wanted to be known by her, seen by her, and that somehow was more dangerous than anything else. Emma took a step back, needing distance, needing air. "This cannot happen," she said. "Whatever you think this is, it cannot happen." "Why not?" "Because we live in different worlds. Because I clean your bathroom and you own buildings. Because people like you do not end up with people like me. Not in any way that does not end badly." He looked at her for a long time, and Emma could not read his expression. Then he said very quietly, "You are right. This will probably end badly, but I am still going to try." And with that, he turned and walked out of the suite, leaving Emma standing there alone, her heart racing, her hands shaking, and her entire world tilted on its axis. She did not know it yet, but that was the moment everything changed. That was the moment when the careful walls she had built around her heart began to crack. Because Adrian Wolfe was not a man who gave up, and Emma Torres, despite all her fears and defenses, was not as invisible as she thought. Their collision had already begun, and neither of them could stop it now, even if they wanted to. Over the following days, their encounters became both inevitable and electric. He would be there when she arrived to clean, sometimes reading, sometimes working on his laptop, sometimes just standing by that massive window, staring out at the city, like he was searching for something he had lost. And every time he would speak to her, not small talk, not pleasantries, real things, hard things, things that made her uncomfortable and curious and terrified all at once. He told her about growing up with nothing, about building his first company, with money borrowed from people who still held it over his head. He told her about betrayals and victories, and the way success had isolated him more completely than poverty ever had. And slowly, carefully, Emma began to share pieces of herself too. The scholarship she had lost when her mother got sick. The dreams she had buried when survival became more important than ambition. The bone-deep exhaustion of working 3 jobs and still feeling like she was failing. And through it all, the tension between them grew. It lived in the space between their words, in the moments when their eyes met and held, in the accidental brush of hands that felt anything but accidental. Emma found herself thinking about him at odd moments, found herself looking forward to her shifts in a way that frightened her, because wanting him was dangerous. Letting herself feel anything for him was asking to get hurt. But her heart, it seemed, did not care about danger. One evening, she arrived at the suite to find it dark, except for the city lights streaming through the windows. She thought he was out, felt a strange mixture of relief and disappointment. She turned on a single lamp and began her work. She was halfway through making the bed when she felt him behind her. She spun around, gasping. He was standing so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body. His eyes were dark, intense, filled with something that made her knees weak. "You scared me," she said, pressing a hand to her racing heart. "I know," he said. "I am sorry," but he did not move away. Neither did she. They stood there, inches apart, breathing the same air. And Emma felt like the entire world had narrowed down to this moment, this space, this impossible pull between them. "I think about you," he said, his voice rough. "All the time. I try not to. I tell myself it is foolish, but I cannot stop." Emma's throat felt tight. "You should stop. I know, we cannot do this. I know that too. Then why are you standing so close to me?" "Because," he said, lifting one hand to trace the line of her jaw with his fingertips, sending shivers down her spine, "you make me feel human again, and I did not realize how much I needed that until I saw you." Emma closed her eyes, fighting against the tide of emotion threatening to drown her. "This is a bad idea," she whispered. "The worst," he agreed. When she opened her eyes, he was even closer. His lips were inches from hers. She could feel his breath on her skin. Her entire body was screaming at her to close the distance, to take what she wanted. Consequences be damned. But some last shred of self-preservation held her back. "I have to go," she said, though every cell in her body was begging her to stay. She saw something flash in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or understanding. He stepped back, giving her space, and Emma felt the loss of his warmth like a physical ache. "Okay," he said simply. She gathered her supplies with shaking hands and walked to the door. But before she could leave, his voice stopped her one more time. "Emma." She paused, not trusting herself to turn around. "That kiss we almost had," he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice, the darkness, the promise. I'm going to think about it every day until it actually happens. And then she did turn around, found him watching her with an intensity that stole her breath. And she knew with absolute certainty that he was right. This was not over. It was only beginning. And that kiss, that impossible, inevitable kiss would haunt her dreams until the moment it finally became real. She left the suite feeling like she was made of electricity and fear and want. And for the first time in years, Emma Torres felt truly, dangerously alive. The subway ride home that night was a blur of sensation and confusion. Emma sat in her usual corner seat, the one near the doors where she could make a quick exit if the car got too crowded or too uncomfortable. But tonight she barely noticed her surroundings. Her mind was still in that suite, still standing inches from Adrian Wolfe, still feeling the ghost of his fingertips on her jaw. She touched her face now, tracing the same path he had traced, and felt her skin burn with the memory. What was she doing? What was she thinking? Men like Adrian Wolfe did not fall for women like her. They did not have real relationships with housekeepers. At best, she would be a brief distraction, a novelty that wore off as soon as something shinier caught his attention. At worst, she would be a scandal, a problem to be managed and discarded. Either way, she would end up hurt. She knew this. She had seen it happen to other women, had watched them get chewed up and spit out by men with power and money and the conviction that they could have anything they wanted. But knowing something and feeling it were two different things. And right now, despite all her logic and common sense and hard-earned cynicism, Emma felt something she had not felt in years. She felt wanted, not needed. Not used, wanted for herself, for the person she was beneath the uniform, and the exhaustion and the careful mask she wore to survive. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her roommate Jenna, asking if she was working late again. Emma typed back a quick response, then hesitated before adding, "Can we talk when I get home?" She needed to tell someone about this. Needed to hear another person say the words she was afraid to say to herself. That this was dangerous. That she needed to walk away. That she was playing with fire and fire always burned. Jenna was waiting up when Emma finally made it home at nearly midnight. Their apartment was a fifth-floor walk-up in Queens, the kind of place where the heat only worked intermittently, and the neighbors' arguments bled through the walls at all hours. But it was theirs. Or at least it was affordable. Barely. Jenna worked as a waitress at a diner in Brooklyn, pulling shifts almost as brutal as Emma's, and together they managed to scrape by month to month, paycheck to paycheck. Jenna took one look at Emma's face and set down her phone. "Okay," she said. "What happened? You look like you have seen a ghost, or met a movie star. Or both." Emma dropped her bag by the door and collapsed onto their second-hand couch. "It is worse than that," she said. Over the next hour, Emma told her everything. The wrong door. The encounter in the suite. The reassignment. The conversations. The almost kiss. She watched Jenna's expression shift from curiosity to concern to something close to alarm. "Emma," Jenna said when she finally finished, "this guy is Adrian Wolfe. Do you know who he is? Do you know what they say about him? I have heard the stories. Then you know this is not going to end well. Guys like that, they do not do real relationships. They collect people. They use them and throw them away." "I know," Emma said quietly. "I know all of that. But Jenna, when he looks at me, it does not feel like that. It feels real." Jenna sighed and reached over to squeeze Emma's hand. "I'm sure it does feel real. To you. But what about to him? Can you honestly say you know what he is thinking? What he really wants?" Emma could not answer that. Because Jenna was right. She did not know. She had seen glimpses of vulnerability in Adrian, had heard the pain in his voice when he talked about his past, but she had also seen the way he commanded a room, the way he expected obedience, the way he moved through the world like he owned it. And maybe he did. Maybe everything was just a game to him, a way to pass the time, a way to feel something in a life that had gone numb. "Just be careful," Jenna said. "Please, I do not want to watch you get hurt." "I will," Emma promised. But even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. She was already hurt, already caught, already falling into something she could not control and did not fully understand. The next few days were torture. Emma went to work, did her job, and tried to maintain professional distance. But Adrian made it impossible. He was always there, always watching, always finding excuses to talk to her. He asked about her day, her dreams, her favorite books. He listened like her words mattered, like she mattered, and Emma felt herself softening despite her best efforts. He also started leaving things for her. Small things. A book she had mentioned loving years ago, first edition, waiting on the table. A cup of coffee, still hot, with her name written on it in his handwriting. A note that said simply, "Thank you for existing." She did not know whether to be charmed or terrified. Maybe both. And then came the day that changed everything. Emma arrived at the suite to find Adrian sitting on the couch, his head in his hands. He looked different. Smaller somehow, broken. She set down her cart and approached slowly. "Are you okay?" He looked up, and Emma saw something in his eyes that made her chest ache. He had been crying. This man, this untouchable billionaire, had tears on his face. "My father died," he said, 2 years ago. I never told anyone how I felt about it. I just kept working, kept building, kept pretending it did not matter. But it mattered. He was a terrible father. He destroyed my family. He chose money over everything. Over everyone. And I hated him for it. But he was still my father. And now he is gone. And I never got to tell him any of it. I never got to say that I hated him, or that I loved him, or that I forgave him. I just worked. Like that would fix it. Like that would make me feel less empty. Emma did not think. She just moved. She crossed the room and sat beside him and took his hand. It was the first time they had really touched, and she felt the connection like an electric current running through her entire body. "You do not have to be empty," she said softly. "You do not have to carry this alone." He looked at her, really looked at her, and Emma saw past the walls and the armor and the carefully constructed persona. She saw the boy who had been abandoned, the man who had been betrayed, the human being who was so desperately lonely he had forgotten what it felt like to be seen. And then he kissed her. It was not the kiss she had imagined. It was not smooth or practiced or controlled. It was desperate, raw, full of need and grief and years of pent-up emotion. His hands cupped her face. His lips moved against hers with an urgency that stole her breath, and Emma kissed him back with everything she had. Because in that moment, she did not care about consequences or common sense or all the reasons this was a terrible idea. She cared about him, about this broken, impossible man who had somehow found his way into her heart. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "I am sorry," he said. "I should not have done that." "Do not apologize," Emma said. "Do not you dare apologize. This is not fair to you. I am not good for you." "Then let me decide that," Emma said fiercely. "Stop trying to protect me from yourself. I am an adult. I can make my own choices." He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "What if I hurt you? What if you do not?" They sat there, foreheads touching, hands clasped, and Emma felt the world shifting beneath her. This was the moment, the point of no return. She could walk away now, protect herself, keep her heart safe. Or she could stay. She could take the risk. She could choose to believe that maybe, just maybe, this impossible thing between them could be real. She chose to stay. That night marked a turning point. They did not become a couple in any traditional sense. How could they? She was still his housekeeper. He was still a billionaire. The world would not understand, would not accept it. So they existed in secret, in stolen moments and whispered conversations. Emma would come to clean his suite, and they would talk for hours. He would tell her about his business deals, and she would tell him about her dreams of going back to school, of becoming a social worker, of helping people the way no one had helped her. He listened, really listened. And slowly, carefully, Emma began to believe that maybe this could work, that maybe love did not have to make sense to be real. But secrets, Emma was learning, always had a way of coming to light. And when they did, the fallout was more devastating than she could have ever imagined. The days that followed the kiss were a blur of contradictions. Emma moved through her life like someone caught between two worlds, never fully present in either. At work, she was the same efficient, invisible housekeeper she had always been. She smiled politely at guests, kept her head down, did her job without complaint. but inside she was burning. Every moment away from Adrian felt like holding her breath underwater. Every moment with him felt like coming up for air only to be pulled under again, deeper, more desperately. They were careful, so careful. Emma would arrive at the suite at her scheduled time, cart loaded with fresh linens and cleaning supplies, looking every bit the part of the dutiful employee. The cameras in the hallway saw nothing unusual. The other staff noticed nothing out of place. But once that door closed behind her, once they were alone in that suite suspended 52 floors above the city, everything changed. Adrian would be waiting, sometimes by the window, silhouetted against the skyline, sometimes at his desk, pretending to work but watching her from the corner of his eye, sometimes sitting on the couch, that same couch where he had broken down and told her about his father, where everything between them had shifted from impossible to inevitable. And Emma would set down her cart, and he would cross the room, and they would exist for a few stolen hours in a space that belonged only to them. They talked. God, how they talked. About everything and nothing. He told her about his first business venture, a tech startup he had built in a garage with 2 college friends who later tried to force him out. About the moment he realized that trust was a luxury he could no longer afford. About the years he had spent building walls around himself, brick by brick, until he forgot there was anything inside worth protecting. Emma listened, her heart breaking for the boy he had been, the man he had become. And she told him things she had never told anyone. About her father, who had left when she was 8, walking out one morning for cigarettes and never coming back. About her mother, who had worked herself sick trying to provide, who had died of a heart attack 2 weeks before Emma's 19th birthday, leaving her alone with medical bills that swallowed her college fund whole. About the scholarship she had lost, the dreams she had buried, the profound exhaustion of always being one crisis away from disaster. "You are stronger than you know," Adrian said one afternoon, his fingers tracing patterns on her palm. They were sitting on the floor, backs against the couch, the city sprawling below them like a promise or a threat. "You have survived things that would have destroyed most people." "I do not feel strong," Emma admitted. "I feel tired. Like I am always running but never getting anywhere." He turned to look at her, and there was something fierce in his eyes. "Then stop running," he said. "Stay here, with me." Emma's breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I am saying I want this to be real, not just stolen moments in a hotel suite. I want to take you to dinner. I want to wake up next to you. I want to stop pretending that what we have is temporary." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "You know we cannot do that. The moment we go public, everything changes. I become a gold digger. You become the rich guy who is slumming it with the help. We get torn apart before we even have a chance." "Then we do not go public," Adrian said. "Not yet. Not until we are ready. But Emma, I need you to know that this is not a game to me. You are not a distraction. You are the first real thing I have felt in years." She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. But Emma had learned young that wanting something did not make it true. That hope was a dangerous thing. That letting yourself need someone was the fastest way to get hurt. But she was already in too deep, already drowning, already lost. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, we will try." He kissed her then, slow and deep and full of promise. And for a moment, Emma let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they could make this work. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. The first crack appeared 3 days later. Emma was cleaning one of the standard suites on the 34th floor when her supervisor, Margaret, appeared in the doorway. Margaret was a stern woman in her 50s, all sharp edges and suspicious eyes, the kind of person who seemed to take personal offense at joy. "Torres," she said, her voice clipped. A word. Emma set down the duvet she had been smoothing and followed Margaret into the hallway. Her heart was already racing. Had someone seen something? Had they been caught? Had Adrian done something stupid like send flowers to the housekeeping office? "There have been complaints," Margaret said without preamble. "Complaints? About what?" "About the amount of time you spend in the presidential suite. Some of the other staff have noticed that your cleaning schedule for that room takes significantly longer than it should." Emma felt her stomach drop. "I am thorough," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "The suite is much larger than the standard rooms. It requires more time." Margaret's eyes narrowed. The presidential suite has been occupied by Mr. Wolf for 3 weeks now. In that time, you have spent an average of 2.5 hours per shift in that room. The standard time for a suite of that size, even accounting for deep cleaning, is 90 minutes. Would you care to explain the discrepancy? Emma's mind raced. She could feel the walls closing in. I did not realize I was taking too long, she said carefully. I will work more efficiently. See that you do, Margaret said. And Torres, whatever you think is happening up there, whatever arrangement you think you have, it ends now. Men like Mr. Wolf do not have relationships with women like you. They have distractions. And when they are done, they move on. Do not make the mistake of thinking you are special. The words hit like a slap. Emma felt her face burn with shame and anger and a horrible creeping doubt. Because what if Margaret was right? What if she was just fooling herself? What if Adrian's words, his promises, his apparent vulnerability, were all just part of a game she did not understand? She finished her shift in a daze, moving through the motions mechanically. When it was time to clean the presidential suite, she almost did not go. Almost sent one of the other housekeepers in her place. But she needed to see him, needed to look into his eyes and know one way or another if this was real. Adrian was on the phone when she entered, his voice sharp and businesslike as he paced by the window. He glanced at her, raised a finger to indicate he would be just a minute, then turned back to his conversation. Emma started her work, stripping the bed with more force than necessary, her mind churning with Margaret's words. When Adrian finally hung up, he crossed to her immediately. "You are upset," he said. "What happened?" "My supervisor called me out," Emma said, not looking at him. "She said I am spending too much time up here." "That people are talking. Let them talk. You do not understand. She basically told me that I am an idiot for thinking this means anything. That you are just passing time until you get bored." Adrian's jaw tightened. "She does not know me." "She does not know us, doesn't she?" Emma said, finally meeting his eyes. "Because, Adrian, she is right about one thing. We do live in different worlds. And eventually you are going to go back to yours. You are going to leave this hotel, leave this city, leave me behind. And I am going to be the girl who was stupid enough to believe that a billionaire could actually care about a housekeeper. Is that really what you think?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "That this is all a lie." "I do not know what to think anymore," Emma said, and she hated the way her voice broke. "I do not know how to do this. I do not know how to be with someone like you." "Then let me show you," Adrian said. He crossed to his desk, pulled out his wallet and extracted a sleek black credit card. He held it out to her. "Take this." Emma stared at it like it was a snake. "What, take it? Buy yourself something nice. Go to a spa. Get your hair done. Take a few days off work." And just like that, the fragile hope in Emma's chest shattered into 1,000 pieces. She stepped back, shaking her head. "That is your solution? Throw money at the problem?" "That is not what I meant." "Yes, it is," Emma said, her voice rising. "That is exactly what you meant. You think you can fix this with your money. You think you can fix me. I am trying to help you." "I do not need your help," Emma said. "And I definitely do not need your money. I need you to understand that I am not some project you can fix. I am not broken. I am just poor, and there is a difference." Adrian's expression was unreadable. "I never said you were broken, but you think it," Emma said. "I can see it in your eyes. You look at my life and you see something that needs fixing. Well, I have news for you, Adrian. My life was fine before you walked into it. Difficult, yes. Exhausting, yes. But it was mine. And I knew where I stood. I knew the rules. Now I do not know anything anymore. I do not know if you care about me, or if you just like the way it makes you feel to be my savior." The silence that followed was deafening. Adrian stood there, the credit card still in his hand, looking at her like she had just stabbed him. And maybe she had. Maybe her words had found all the soft spots he tried so hard to protect. "You are right," he said finally, his voice hollow. "I do not know how to do this either. I have spent so long being alone that I have forgotten how to be with someone, how to let someone in without trying to control every variable." "Then maybe we both need to figure it out," Emma said, softer now. "But Adrian, I cannot be bought. I cannot be managed. If this is going to work, you have to see me as an equal, not as someone you need to save." He looked at her for a long moment, then slowly put the credit card back in his wallet. "You are right," he said. "I am sorry. I was trying to help, but I was really just trying to make myself feel less helpless. Because, Emma, the truth is I do not know how to fix this. I do not know how to make our worlds fit together. All I know is that when I am with you, I feel human again. And when you are not here, I feel empty. And that terrifies me." Emma felt her anger drain away, replaced by a bone-deep weariness. "It terrifies me too," she admitted. He crossed to her slowly, giving her time to step away if she wanted. But she did not. She let him pull her into his arms, let herself rest her head against his chest, let herself breathe him in. And for a moment, just a moment, the world outside that suite did not exist. There were no supervisors, no gossip, no impossible class divides. There was just them. But moments Emma knew never lasted. That night, she went home to find Jenna waiting up with her laptop open. Her expression grim. "You need to see this," Jenna said. Emma's heart sank. What now? Jenna turned the laptop around. On the screen was a gossip blog, the kind that trafficked in scandal and speculation. And there, in grainy but unmistakable detail, was a photograph. Emma could not tell when it had been taken, but she recognized the location immediately. It was the hallway outside the presidential suite. And in the photo, Adrian's hand was on her arm, his face close to hers, his expression intense. To anyone looking, it would seem intimate, inappropriate, exactly what it was. The headline read, "Billionaire Adrian Wolf's Secret Hotel Romance. Mystery woman identified as hotel staff." Below the photo was a brief article full of innuendo and speculation. It did not name Emma, but it would not take long. Someone at the hotel had clearly leaked this. And once her name got out, once the full story hit the press, her life would be over. Emma felt the room spin. How did they get this? Someone at the hotel must have tipped them off, Jenna said. "Emma, this is bad. If your boss sees this, you are going to lose your job." "I know," Emma said faintly. "And if Adrian sees this, he probably already has," Emma said. "Men like him have entire teams whose job is to monitor this stuff." As if on cue, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. But she knew who it was. "We need to talk tomorrow, not at the hotel. I will send a car." Emma showed the message to Jenna, who shook her head. "He is already trying to control this. Already trying to manage you. Or maybe he is just trying to protect me," Emma said, but even as she said it, she was not sure she believed it. She did not sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the city, and wondered how everything had gone so wrong so fast. 24 hours ago she had been happy, or at least she had been hopeful. She had believed that maybe, despite all the obstacles, they could make this work. Now she felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down into darkness. The next morning, a sleek black car pulled up outside her building exactly at 9. The driver did not speak, just opened the door and waited. Emma climbed in, feeling like she was being swept along by a current too strong to fight. The car drove for nearly an hour, leaving the city behind, winding through suburbs and then into countryside that Emma had not even known existed this close to Manhattan. Finally, they turned down a long private drive and pulled up to a house that took Emma's breath away. It was modern and sprawling, all glass and steel and clean lines perched on a hilltop, with views that seemed to stretch forever. This was not a house, it was a statement. A fortress, a world unto itself. Adrian was waiting on the front steps. He looked tired, Emma thought. Or maybe just older, the weight of everything settling onto his shoulders. "Welcome," he said as she climbed out of the car. "This is my home. My real home. No one comes here. Not business associates, not friends, not family, just me. And now you." Emma looked around, taking in the manicured grounds, the infinity pool, the sculptures that probably cost more than her entire neighborhood. "Why did you bring me here?" "Because I wanted you to see," he said. "I wanted you to understand. This is everything I built, everything I worked for. And it is empty, Emma. It is beautiful and expensive and completely, utterly empty, because none of it means anything without someone to share it with." "Adrian," Emma started, but he held up a hand. "I saw the photo," he said. "I know what is happening, and I know that this is about to get very ugly, very fast. The press is going to dig into your life. They are going to find every mistake you have ever made and put it on display. They are going to call you names, question your motives, make your life hell. And I cannot stop that. I have tried. I have had my lawyers send cease and desist letters. I have called in favors. But the beast is already awake and it is hungry. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. So what do we do? I am giving you a choice, Adrian said. You can walk away. Right now. I will make sure you are taken care of. I will set up a fund in your name. Enough to go back to school, to start over somewhere new, to never have to worry about money again. No strings attached. No expectations. Just a clean break and a fresh start. And if I do not want to walk away? Then you stay, Adrian said, and his voice was raw with emotion. You stay and we fight. We go public on our terms. We tell our story before someone else tells it for us. We face the press and the judgment and all the ugliness together. And maybe we survive it, or maybe it destroys us. I do not know. But Emma, I need you to understand what you would be signing up for. This will not be easy. This will not be some fairy tale. This will be war. Emma looked at him, this impossible man who had turned her world upside down. She thought about her life before him, the exhaustion, the loneliness, the feeling of being invisible. And she thought about her life with him, the fear, the uncertainty, the constant awareness that they were building their happiness on shifting sand. But she also thought about the way he looked at her, the way he listened, the way he made her feel seen and heard and valued, the way he had shared his pain with her, had let her see the wounded, broken parts of himself that he hid from everyone else. And she realized that Margaret had been wrong. Emma was not special because Adrian had chosen her. Adrian was special because he had let her choose him back. I am not walking away, she said. Emma, you do not understand what you are choosing. Yes, I do, she said fiercely. I am choosing you. I am choosing us. I am choosing to believe that sometimes the impossible things are the ones worth fighting for. For a long moment, Adrian just looked at her. Then he crossed the space between them and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. And Emma held him back, feeling his heart pounding against hers, feeling the tremor in his hands, and she knew that he was just as scared as she was. Just as unsure, just as desperate to believe that this crazy, impossible thing between them could somehow be real. We are going to need a plan, he said finally, his voice muffled against her hair. Emma pulled back just enough to look at him. Then it is a good thing I am smart. He smiled at that, a real smile, and Emma felt something in her chest loosen. Maybe they would survive this. Maybe they would not, but they were going to try together. Over the next few hours, they sat in Adrian's living room and strategized. He had a PR team on standby, ready to craft a narrative that would paint their relationship in the best possible light. Emma hated the idea of being managed, of having her life turned into a carefully constructed story, but she understood the necessity. In the world Adrian inhabited, perception was everything. I want to tell the truth, Emma said, or as close to it as we can get. The truth is messy, Adrian warned. The truth is that I saw you and wanted you, and used my power to get close to you. That does not play well. Then we changed the framing, Emma said. We say that you saw me and were intrigued, that we started talking and discovered a connection, that you tried to keep your distance but could not, that I tried to stay professional but failed, that we fell in love despite knowing it was complicated. Adrian looked at her thoughtfully. You are good at this. I have spent my whole life crafting narratives that make me acceptable to people, Emma said. Poor girl works hard, stays humble, never asks for too much. I know how to tell a story people want to hear. But is that the story you want to tell? Emma thought about that. No, she admitted. The story I want to tell is that I am a woman who has worked her ass off her entire life and finally met someone who sees me for who I am. Someone who challenges me and frustrates me and makes me feel things I did not think I was capable of feeling. Someone who is flawed and complicated and sometimes gets it wrong but is trying. That is the story I want to tell. Then that is the story we will tell, Adrian said. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Adrian's PR team arrived, a polished trio of professionals who treated Emma with a cautious courtesy that she found both reassuring and unsettling. They asked her questions. Lots of questions. About her background, her family, her education, her work history. Emma answered honestly, watching them take notes, watching them exchange glances that she could not quite read. This is good, the lead publicist, a woman named Victoria, said finally. "You have a compelling backstory. Hard-working, self-sufficient, no scandals. You are sympathetic. We can work with this." "I am not a product," Emma said sharply. Victoria looked at her with something like respect. "No," she said. "You are not, but the media will try to turn you into one. Our job is to make sure that when they do, you come out looking like a person worth rooting for." Emma did not like it. Did not like the calculation, the strategizing, the way they talked about her life, like it was a narrative to be shaped and sold. But she understood it. In Adrian's world, this was survival. By the time Emma left that night, driven back to the city in the same black car, she felt wrung out, exhausted, but also, strangely, resolved. They had a plan. They had a strategy. And in 48 hours they would go public. They would tell their story on their terms and deal with whatever came after. She just hoped they were strong enough to survive it. Back at her apartment, Jenna was waiting with Chinese takeout and a bottle of cheap wine. Emma told her everything while they ate straight from the containers, sitting cross-legged on the couch like they had done 1,000 times before. "So you are really doing this," Jenna said when she finished. "You are really going all in." "I am," Emma said, "even though you could walk away." "Even though he offered you an out?" "Especially because he offered me an out," Emma said. "Because Jenna, he could have just paid me off and moved on. He could have made this go away with money and lawyers and non-disclosure agreements. But he did not. He gave me a choice, and that tells me more about who he is than anything else ever could." Jenna was quiet for a long moment. "I am scared for you," she said finally. "I am scared for me too," Emma admitted. "But Jenna, for the first time in my life, I am not just surviving. I am living. I am feeling. I am taking a risk on something that might actually make me happy. And even if it all falls apart, even if I get hurt, at least I will know that I tried." Jenna reached over and squeezed her hand. "Then I am with you. Whatever happens, I am with you." Emma felt tears sting her eyes. "Thank you." They sat there in comfortable silence, drinking wine that tasted like regret, and eating noodles that had gone cold. And Emma let herself imagine just for a moment what life might look like on the other side of this. Would she and Adrian survive the scrutiny? Would their relationship grow stronger, or would it crumble under the pressure? Would she lose her job, her privacy, her sense of self? She did not know. Could not know. All she could do was hold on and hope that the man she had chosen to believe in was worth the fall. 2 days later, the story broke. Not in some gossip blog or tabloid rag, but in a carefully orchestrated exclusive interview with a major news network. Adrian and Emma sat side by side on a pristine white couch, their hands clasped together, and told their story to millions of viewers. Emma was terrified. She had never been on television before, had never faced a camera and known that the entire world was watching. But Adrian was calm beside her, his presence steadying her, his thumb tracing small circles on the back of her hand. The interviewer was a polished woman in her 40s, with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. She asked the expected questions. How did they meet? When did they know it was serious? How did they navigate the class difference? Adrian answered smoothly, with the ease of someone who had done 1,000 interviews. But when the questions turned to Emma, when the interviewer asked what it was like to be involved with one of the most powerful men in the country, Emma spoke from the heart. "It is terrifying," she said honestly, "because I know that people are going to assume things about me. That I am a gold digger, that I am using him, that I do not belong in his world, and maybe they are right. Maybe I do not belong, but I am here anyway, because I fell in love with a man who sees me, who values me, who makes me want to be braver than I am." The interviewer leaned forward. "And what do you say to people who think this relationship is inappropriate? That Mr. Wolf used his power to pursue an employee?" Emma felt Adrian tense beside her, but she did not flinch. "I say that I am an adult who made my own choices. Yes, Adrian is wealthy and powerful. Yes, there is an imbalance between us, but I am not helpless. I am not some victim who needs rescuing. I am a woman who fell in love and decided to fight for that love, even though it is complicated and messy, and probably a terrible idea. And if people want to judge me for that, let them. I know my truth." The interview continued for another 20 minutes. but Emma barely remembered the rest. She was on autopilot, letting Victoria's coaching guide her responses, letting Adrian's steady presence keep her grounded. And when it was finally over, when the cameras turned off and the crew started packing up, Emma felt like she had just run a marathon. "You were incredible," Adrian said as they were driven away from the studio. "I felt like I was going to throw up the entire time," Emma admitted. "You did not show it. You were strong, honest yourself. That is all I could have asked for." Emma leaned her head against his shoulder. "What happens now?" "Now," Adrian said, "we wait, and we see if the world is willing to let us be happy." But the world, as it turned out, was not particularly interested in their happiness. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Within hours of the interview airing, social media exploded with opinions. Some people were supportive, calling their story romantic, praising Emma for her honesty, but far more were vicious. They called her a social climber, a manipulator, a woman who had used her position to trap a wealthy man. They dug into her past, found photos from high school, from college, and dissected every aspect of her appearance, her background, her worthiness. One particularly nasty thread on Twitter went viral. It featured side-by-side photos of Emma in her housekeeping uniform and Adrian in a tuxedo at some gala. The caption read, "When the help gets ideas above her station." The comments below were even worse. Hundreds of strangers, people who had never met her, who knew nothing about her life, tearing her apart with a casual cruelty that took Emma's breath away. She made the mistake of reading them. Sitting in Adrian's penthouse apartment, where she had moved temporarily to escape the reporters camped outside her building, Emma scrolled through her phone and watched as thousands of people reduced her entire existence to a punchline, digger, opportunist, trashy, desperate. The words blurred together after a while, each one a small cut that bled into the others, until Emma felt like she was drowning in other people's hatred. Adrian found her on the bathroom floor, her phone clutched in her hand, tears streaming down her face. He did not say anything. He just sat down beside her, took the phone gently from her grasp and held her while she cried. "I cannot do this," Emma sobbed. "I cannot handle everyone hating me." "They do not know you," Adrian said fiercely. "They do not get to define you, but they do," Emma said. "Do you not see? This is who I am now. Not Emma Torres, social work student. Not Emma Torres, hard worker. Just Emma Torres, the gold digger who seduced a billionaire. That is not who you are." "It does not matter what I am," Emma said, pulling away from him. "It only matters what they think I am, and they have already decided." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Then we prove them wrong." "How?" Emma demanded. "How do we prove anything to people who have already made up their minds? They do not care about the truth. They just want a villain, and I am convenient." The next few weeks were a nightmare. Emma could not leave the apartment without being followed by photographers. She could not check her phone without seeing her face on some new gossip site, accompanied by increasingly wild speculation. One article claimed she was pregnant. Another suggested she had a secret past as an exotic dancer. None of it was true, but truth did not seem to matter. Her job at the hotel, predictably, did not survive the scandal. Margaret called her personally to deliver the news. "We are letting you go effective immediately," she said, her voice clipped and businesslike. "Your presence has become a distraction. It is best for everyone if you move on." Emma wanted to argue, wanted to fight, but she was too tired. She just hung up and added unemployment to the growing list of things the relationship had cost her. Jenna tried to visit, but the reporters made it impossible. They swarmed her every time she approached the building, shouting questions, taking photos, treating her like she was complicit in some grand conspiracy. After the third attempt, Jenna called in tears. "I am sorry," she said. "I cannot do this, sir. I cannot be part of this circus." "I understand," Emma said, and she did. She could not ask Jenna to sacrifice her privacy, her safety, her peace of mind just to maintain their friendship. So she let her go too. Another loss. Another price. Adrian tried to make it better. He took her to Paris for a long weekend, thinking that distance might provide relief, but the paparazzi followed them there too. They took photos of Emma looking out of place in expensive restaurants, caught her unflattering angles while she squinted in the sunlight, made her look exactly like what the internet had decided she was. The woman who did not belong. When they returned to New York, Emma felt hollowed out. She had lost her job, her best friend, her privacy, and her sense of self, all for a relationship that increasingly felt like it was suffocating her. "Adrian, we need to talk," she said one night as they sat in his living room, the city lights twinkling below them like indifferent stars. He looked up from his laptop, and Emma saw the weariness in his eyes. She was not the only one being destroyed by this. Adrian's business partners had started distancing themselves. His board of directors had called an emergency meeting to discuss whether his personal life was affecting his judgment. Even his own mother, a woman he barely spoke to, had given an interview to a magazine calling Emma an unsuitable match. "I cannot keep doing this," Emma said. "Do not," Adrian said, his voice sharp with panic. "Do not say what I think you are about to say." "What choice do I have?" Emma said, and she was crying now, tears running down her face unchecked. "I have lost everything. My job, my friends, my privacy, my dignity. I wake up every morning and see strangers debating whether I am pretty enough to be with you, whether I am smart enough, whether I deserve you. And Adrian, I am so tired. I am so tired of fighting." "Then stop fighting," Adrian said. "Let me take care of you. Let me make this easier." "That is the problem," Emma said. "You cannot make this easier. You cannot fix this with money or influence or grand gestures, because the fundamental issue is not them. It is us. We are from different worlds, and no matter how much we love each other, those worlds are never going to fit together. There is always going to be a gap, and I am always going to be the one expected to bridge it." "That is not fair," Adrian said. "Life is not fair," Emma shot back. "You of all people should know that. And I'm not saying you are a bad person. I am not even saying this is your fault. I am just saying that I cannot be the person you need me to be. I cannot be comfortable in your world. I cannot smile for cameras and make small talk at galas and pretend that I do not notice when people look at me like I am something you scraped off your shoe. I am not strong enough for that." "You are the strongest person I know," Adrian said, and his voice was breaking now too. "Then why do I feel like I am falling apart?" They sat in silence for a long time, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. Emma knew what she needed to do, what she should do. She should leave, should walk away before this relationship destroyed what little was left of her. But she also knew that leaving would destroy her in a different way, because despite everything, despite the cost and the pain and the impossibility of it all, she loved him. God help her, she loved him. "I need time," she said finally. "I need space to figure out who I am outside of us. Outside of this circus." Adrian's face crumpled. "You are leaving." "Just for a little while," Emma said, though even as she said it, she was not sure it was true. "I am going to stay with my aunt in Boston. She is the only family I have left. She does not care about any of this. She just wants me to be okay. And right now I am not okay, Adrian. I am so far from okay." "How long?" Adrian asked. "I do not know," Emma admitted. "However long it takes to remember what it feels like to be myself. And us? I do not know that either." Adrian stood abruptly, pacing to the window, his hands clenched into fists. "This is not fair," he said again. "I did everything right. I tried to protect you. I tried to make this work." "I know," Emma said softly, "but sometimes trying is not enough. Sometimes love is not enough. Sometimes the world wins." He turned to look at her, and the pain in his eyes was almost unbearable. "I will not give up on us," he said. "Even if you do." "I am not giving up," Emma said. "I am just learning to survive." She left the next morning, slipping out before dawn with a single suitcase and a heart that felt like it had been shattered into a million pieces. The ride to the train station was quiet, just her and a driver who had the decency not to make small talk. And as New York disappeared behind her, as the city that had promised her so much and taken even more faded into the distance, Emma let herself cry. For what she had lost, for what she was leaving behind, for the impossible, beautiful, terrible love that had almost destroyed her. Her aunt's house in Boston was small and warm and blessedly quiet. No reporters, no cameras, no strangers dissecting her life online. Just her Aunt Patricia, a sturdy woman in her 60s who asked no questions and offered no judgment. Just tea and homemade cookies and a guest room that smelled like lavender. For the first week, Emma did nothing. She slept, she read. She sat in the small garden behind the house and let the autumn air wash over her. She turned off her phone and disconnected from the world and slowly, painfully started to piece herself back together. But even in the silence, Adrian haunted her. She would wake from dreams where he was holding her, would catch herself reaching for a phone she had powered down, would see something funny and instinctively want to share it with him. The separation was supposed to bring clarity, but all it brought was ache. On the 10th day, her aunt sat down across from her at breakfast and said, "Do you want to talk about it?" Emma looked up from her untouched toast. "Not really," her aunt nodded. "Fair enough. But Emma, honey, running from something does not make it disappear. It just makes you tired." "I am already tired," Emma said. "Then maybe it is time to stop running." Emma felt tears well up again. "I do not know how to go back. I do not know how to be the person he needs." "Maybe he does not need you to be anyone but yourself," her aunt said gently. "And maybe you do not need to have all the answers right now. Maybe you just need to decide if what you are running from is worse than what you are running to." That night, Emma finally turned on her phone. It took several minutes to power up, and when it did, she was flooded with messages. Texts from Jenna, apologizing and asking if they could talk. Emails from reporters still trying to get her story. Missed calls from numbers she did not recognize, and one message from Adrian sent 3 days ago. Just 3 words, "I miss you." Emma stared at those words for a long time. She thought about everything that had happened, everything they had been through, everything they had lost and everything they still had to lose. And she realized something. Her aunt was right. Running was not solving anything. It was just delaying the inevitable. Because the truth was, no matter how far she went or how long she stayed away, she would always love Adrian Wolfe, and she would always wonder what might have happened if she had been brave enough to stay. The question was not whether she loved him. The question was whether that love was worth the cost. And Emma realized, sitting in her aunt's kitchen with tears streaming down her face, that she already knew the answer. It was worth it. He was worth it. They were worth it. She just had to find the courage to go back and fight for it. The train ride back to New York felt different from the one that had taken Emma away. That first journey had been an escape, a desperate flight from a situation that had become unbearable. This one was a choice, a deliberate step forward into uncertainty, armed with nothing but conviction and a heart that refused to give up, no matter how much easier it would be to let go. Emma watched the landscape blur past her window, the autumn colors giving way to industrial sprawl as they approached the city. Her phone sat heavy in her pocket, Adrian's message still unanswered. "I miss you." 3 simple words that had changed everything. She had drafted a dozen responses over the past 2 days, typed and deleted them all. What could she say? That she missed him too? That she was coming back? That she was terrified but willing to try again? In the end, she decided that some things needed to be said in person, face to face, without the safety of distance or screens. The train pulled into Penn Station just after 6 in the evening, and Emma stepped onto the platform with her single suitcase and a determination that felt both fragile and fierce. She had not told Adrian she was coming, had not warned him or asked him to meet her. This needed to be on her terms. She needed to walk back into his life the same way she had walked out of it, alone, on her own 2 feet. She took a cab to his building, watching the city lights flicker to life as dusk settled over Manhattan. The doorman recognized her immediately, his expression shifting from surprise to something that might have been relief. "Miss Torres," he said, holding the door open. "It is good to see you again." "It is good to be back," Emma said, and realized she meant it. Despite everything, despite the pain and the chaos and the impossibility of it all, New York felt like home. Or maybe it was not New York. Maybe it was just wherever Adrian was. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt endless. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs, her palms slick with nervous sweat. What if he had moved on? What if 3 weeks apart had been enough for him to realize that she was more trouble than she was worth? What if she had waited too long? But when the elevator doors opened directly into his apartment, when she stepped into that familiar space with its floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture, Adrian was there, standing by the window, just like he had been that first night in the hotel suite, like he had never moved, like he had been waiting for her all along. He turned at the sound of the elevator, and Emma saw his expression shift from confusion to disbelief, to something so raw and hopeful it made her chest ache. "Emma," he breathed. "Hi," she said, setting down her suitcase. Her voice was steadier than she felt. "I am back." For a long moment neither of them moved. They just stood there, 20 feet of expensive hardwood between them, looking at each other like they were afraid the other might disappear if they blinked. Then Adrian crossed the room in 3 long strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly Emma could barely breathe. "I thought I lost you," he said, his voice muffled against her hair. "I thought you were gone for good." "I thought about it," Emma admitted, wrapping her arms around him and breathing in his familiar scent. "I thought about staying in Boston, about starting over somewhere quiet where no one knew me, where I could just be Emma Torres again, not the woman who dated Adrian Wolfe. What changed your mind?" Emma pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. "You did," she said. "Or rather, the thought of a life without you did. Because, Adrian, these past 3 weeks have been peaceful. I slept well. I ate regular meals. I did not have to worry about cameras or reporters or strangers on the internet tearing me apart. It was easy. And I hated every second of it. Because easy is not the same as happy. And I would rather have a difficult life with you than an easy life without you." She saw tears gathering in his eyes, this man who never cried, who prided himself on control and composure. "Emma," he said, and his voice broke on her name, "I do not deserve you." "Probably not," Emma said with a small smile. "But I am here anyway, so what are we going to do about it?" He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of all the things they had not said over the phone, all the longing and fear and relief of finding each other again. And Emma kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into that moment, every ounce of courage it had taken to come back, every bit of hope that maybe, just maybe, they could make this work. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right," he said. "I want to build a life with you. A real life, not one where you are hiding or sacrificing or losing yourself to be with me." "Then we need to change the rules," Emma said. "We need to stop letting other people define what we can be. We need to stop playing defense and start playing offense." "What do you mean?" Emma stepped back, her mind already racing with possibilities. The entire time she had been in Boston, she had been thinking about this, about what had gone wrong and how to fix it, about the fundamental imbalance in their relationship and how to address it. "I mean, we need to even the playing field," she said. "Right now, everyone sees me as the poor housekeeper who got lucky. They see you as the powerful billionaire who is slumming it. We need to change that narrative. We need to make me someone in my own right. Not just your girlfriend, not just the woman on your arm. Someone with my own purpose, my own identity, my own power." Adrian looked at her with something like awe. "What are you proposing?" "I am proposing that I go back to school," Emma said. "That I finish my degree in social work. That I build a career helping people. And that we use your resources, not to make me into someone I am not, but to amplify who I already am. We start a foundation. We focus on helping people like me. People who are one crisis away from disaster. People who work multiple jobs and still cannot make ends meet. People who have dreams, but no opportunity to pursue them. We turn this whole mess into something meaningful." Adrian was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then he said, "You have been thinking about this." "I have had 3 weeks of nothing but time to think," Emma said. "And Adrian, I realized something. The reason people are so cruel about us is because they do not understand. They see you as this untouchable figure, and me as someone trying to climb up to your level. But what if we change the dynamic? What if instead of me trying to fit into your world, we created a new world together, one where class and money do not define worth, where people are valued for who they are, not what they have?" "You want to start a revolution," Adrian said, but there was a hint of a smile playing at his lips. "I want to start something," Emma said. "Something that matters. Something that proves we are more than just a scandal or a headline. We are 2 people who found each other and want to make a difference. Together." Adrian studied her for a long moment, and Emma could see the wheels turning in his mind. He was a businessman, a strategist, someone who calculated risk and reward with ruthless efficiency. But she also saw something else in his expression: hope, belief, The possibility that maybe they could turn something broken into something beautiful. "Okay," he said finally. "Let us do it. Let us build something that matters." They stayed up until 3 in the morning, sitting at his dining room table with laptops and notebooks and an endless supply of coffee, sketching out ideas and possibilities. Emma talked about the programs she had studied in college, the gaps in the social safety net, the people who fell through the cracks. Adrian talked about funding and infrastructure and how to build an organization that could actually make a difference instead of just making them feel good about themselves. "We need to be smart about this," Adrian said. "We need to make sure the foundation is legitimate, that it is not just seen as a PR stunt to clean up our image. Then we bring in experts," Emma said. "Social workers, community organizers, people who have been doing this work for years. We listen to them. We learn from them. We do not come in thinking we have all the answers. We come in willing to do the work." Adrian nodded, making notes. "We will need a board of directors, independent oversight, complete transparency about where the money goes, and we need to start small," Emma added. "We do not announce some massive initiative and then fail to deliver. We start with one program. We test it, we refine it, we prove it works. Then we scale." They talked until their voices were hoarse and their eyes were heavy with exhaustion. But by the time the sun started to rise over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, they had the bones of a plan. It was ambitious. It was risky. It was exactly what they needed. Emma fell asleep on Adrian's couch, her head on his shoulder, feeling more hopeful than she had in weeks. They had a direction now, a purpose, a way to take all the pain and scrutiny and turn it into something meaningful. But hope, Emma was learning, was a fragile thing. And the world was not done testing them yet. The announcement of the Torres Wolf Foundation came 2 weeks later, at a carefully orchestrated press conference that Emma's stomach tied in knots just thinking about. They had worked day and night to make it perfect, to make it real, to make sure that when they stood in front of those cameras, they had something substantial to offer, not just empty promises. The Foundation's mission was simple but powerful: to provide emergency financial assistance, educational support, and career development resources to working-class families in crisis. The first program would offer grants to individuals who had lost their jobs due to circumstances beyond their control, helping them cover basic expenses while they got back on their feet. It was modest in scope, but meaningful in impact, and it was something Emma understood in her bones because she had lived it. Standing at the podium in a borrowed dress that actually fit her properly for once, Emma looked out at the sea of reporters and cameras and felt her heart race. Adrian stood beside her, solid and reassuring. But this was her moment, her chance to define herself on her own terms. "Good morning," she began, her voice only shaking a little. "My name is Emma Torres, and I am here today not as Adrian Wolf's girlfriend, but as the co-founder of an organization dedicated to helping people like me. People who work hard, who play by the rules, but who live one emergency away from disaster." She told her story then. Not the sanitized version that Victoria the publicist had crafted, but the real one. She talked about her mother's death and the medical bills that had swallowed her college fund. About working 3 jobs and still barely scraping by. About the constant fear that one mistake, one illness, one piece of bad luck would send her spiraling into homelessness. About the shame of needing help and the systems that made it almost impossible to get it. "I know what it is like to be invisible," Emma said, and she felt tears prick her eyes but refused to let them fall. "I know what it is like to be judged based on your bank account instead of your character. I know what it is like to have dreams, but no pathway to achieve them. And I know that there are millions of people out there right now who feel the same way, who are working themselves to the bone and getting nowhere, who are one crisis away from losing everything. This foundation is for them, for us, for everyone who has ever felt like the system was designed to keep them down." The room was quiet when she finished. Even the reporters, usually so quick with their questions and their skepticism, seemed moved. Then Adrian stepped up to the podium, and Emma felt his hand find hers, their fingers intertwining. "Emma is right," Adrian said. "Our system is broken. It rewards wealth and punishes poverty. It tells people that if they are struggling, it is their fault, that they just need to work harder. But that is a lie. I have seen brilliant, hard-working people destroyed by circumstances beyond their control. I have seen the gap between rich and poor grow wider every year, and I have realized that my wealth is not something I earned alone. It is something that was built on the labor of thousands of people, many of whom will never have the opportunities I had. This foundation is not charity. It is justice. It is an acknowledgement that we all have a responsibility to each other, that we are all connected, that when someone is suffering, we all suffer. The questions came fast after that. Reporters wanted to know about funding, about oversight, about whether this was just a publicity stunt. Adrian and Emma answered them all, calmly and honestly, presenting the documentation they had prepared, the board members they had recruited, the safeguards they had put in place. By the end of the press conference, even the most cynical reporters seemed cautiously optimistic. That night, Emma and Adrian watched the news coverage together, curled up on his couch. The reaction was mixed but mostly positive. Some outlets praised their initiative and their honesty. Others remained skeptical, questioning their motives and their ability to make a real difference. But for the first time since their relationship had gone public, the narrative was not entirely about scandal and class difference. It was about purpose, about trying to do something meaningful. "We did it," Emma said, her head on Adrian's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "We actually did it." "This is just the beginning," Adrian said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "The hard part comes next," and he was right. Launching the foundation was one thing. Making it work was another. Emma threw herself into the effort with a ferocity that surprised even her. She enrolled in online classes to finish her degree. She met with social workers and community organizers and listened to their expertise. She reviewed grant applications and read the stories of people who were struggling, and each one broke her heart and strengthened her resolve. Adrian was by her side through all of it, learning alongside her, using his business acumen to build systems and processes that would make the foundation sustainable. But he also stepped back when necessary, recognizing that Emma needed to lead this, that this was her vision, her passion, her fight. Slowly, painfully, they found their rhythm. Emma moved officially into Adrian's penthouse, though she insisted on keeping her own space within it, a small office where she could work and think and be herself. Jenna reached out, tentatively at first, and they began to rebuild their friendship, meeting for coffee and talking through everything that had happened. Jenna even agreed to help with the foundation's outreach efforts, using her connections in the service industry to spread the word about the programs they were building. The first grant they awarded went to a single mother who had lost her job when her son got sick, and she had to take time off to care for him. Emma delivered the check personally, sitting in the woman's tiny apartment and listening to her story. The woman cried when she saw the amount. It was not a fortune, but it was enough. Enough to cover rent for 3 months, enough to buy groceries and pay utilities. "High enough to breathe, thank you," the woman said, clutching Emma's hands. "You do not know what this means. You do not know how close I was to giving up." Emma squeezed her hands back, tears streaming down her own face. "I know," she said. "Believe me, I know." That night, lying in Adrian's arms, Emma felt something she had not felt in months. She felt at peace. Not because everything was perfect, not because the world had suddenly decided to accept them, but because she knew they were doing something real, something that mattered, something that would outlast the headlines and the gossip and the judgment. But peace, like hope, was fragile, and just when Emma thought they had turned a corner, the past came roaring back with a vengeance. It started with a phone call. Emma was at the foundation office, a modest space they had rented in a building in Brooklyn, far from the glass towers of Manhattan. She was reviewing applications when her phone rang. An unknown number. She almost did not answer, had learned to be wary of unknown numbers, but something made her pick up. "Emma Torres?" A man's voice said. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Michael Torres. I am your brother." Emma's world tilted. She sat down hard in her chair, her heart pounding. "I do not have a brother," she said. "You do," the voice said. "We share the same father. He left your mother when you were 8. He came to my mother a few months later. I was born 9 months after that. I am 26 years old, Emma, and I have been looking for you for a long time." Emma could not breathe, could not think. The room seemed to spin around her. "Why are you calling me now?" Because you are famous now, Michael said, and there was something bitter in his tone. Because you are dating a billionaire and starting a foundation, and suddenly you matter. And I thought maybe, since you are so interested in helping people, you might want to help your own family. What do you want? Emma asked, though she already knew. She had seen this play out 1,000 times in movies and TV shows. Long-lost relatives appearing the moment someone came into money. Our father is sick, Michael said. Cancer. He does not have insurance. He is drowning in medical bills. And I thought maybe your rich boyfriend could help out. Emma felt a cold rage settle over her. Our father walked out on me and my mother, she said, her voice like ice. He left us with nothing. My mother worked herself to death trying to provide for me. And now you are calling me, asking me to help him, after everything. He is still your father, Michael said. He made mistakes. He knows that, but he is dying, Emma. Does not that mean anything to you? It means that karma is real, Emma said. And I'm not interested in absolving him or funding his care. If you want to help him, that is your choice, but leave me out of it. She hung up before he could respond, her hands shaking. For a long time, she just sat there, staring at her phone, feeling like the ground had been ripped out from under her. She had spent years making peace with her father's absence, had built a life that did not include him. And now he was back, or at least the idea of him was back, demanding something from her that she had no intention of giving. When Adrian found her an hour later, still sitting in the same spot, staring into space, he knew immediately that something was wrong. What happened? He asked, kneeling beside her chair. Emma told him everything. About the call, about Michael, about her father, and the cancer and the request for money. Adrian listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each word. What do you want to do? He asked when she finished. I do not know, Emma admitted. Part of me wants to ignore it, to pretend the call never happened. But Adrian, what if this becomes public? What if Michael goes to the press? What if they write stories about how I refused to help my dying father? How do I defend that without looking heartless? You do not, Adrian said. You do not defend it, because you do not owe anyone an explanation. Emma, your father abandoned you. He does not get to waltz back into your life now and demand anything from you. But people will not see it that way, Emma said. They will see a woman with access to money refusing to help her sick father. They will use it against me. Against us. Against the foundation. Then let them, Adrian said fiercely. Emma, you cannot live your life based on what other people might think. You cannot make decisions out of fear. But what if he really is dying? Emma said, and she hated the way her voice wavered. What if I say no and he dies and I have to live with that for the rest of my life? Adrian took her hands in his. Only you can answer that, he said gently. But whatever you decide, I am with you. If you want to help him, we will help him. If you want to walk away, we will walk away. But Emma, please do not let guilt or fear make this decision for you. Make it based on what you truly want, what you truly feel. Emma closed her eyes, trying to quiet the storm of emotions raging inside her. What did she want? What did she feel? Beneath the anger and the fear and the confusion, what was the truth? She thought about her mother, who had worked herself to death trying to provide, who had never spoken ill of the man who abandoned them, who had taught Emma that holding on to anger was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. She thought about the foundation they were building, about the mission of helping people in crisis. She thought about the woman she wanted to be, the person she was becoming, and she realized that this was not about her father. It was about her, about the kind of person she chose to be when faced with an impossible situation. I want to see him, she said finally, opening her eyes to meet Adrian's gaze. Not because I forgive him, not because I owe him anything, but because I need to look him in the eye and understand why he did what he did. I need closure. Real closure, not just the story I told myself to survive. Adrian nodded. Okay, he said. Then we will go together. The hospital was in New Jersey, a 30-minute drive from Manhattan that felt like crossing into another world. Michael had texted her the details, his messages brief and businesslike. Room 412, visiting hours until 8. She did not tell him she was coming. Did not want to give him time to prepare or to coach their father on what to say. Adrian offered to come in with her, but Emma shook her head. This is something I need to do alone, she said. I will be right here, he promised. If you need me, I am right here. Emma walked into the hospital with her heart in her throat. The smell hit her first. That particular combination of antiseptic and illness that brought back memories of her mother's final days. She found room 412 at the end of a long hallway and paused outside, trying to steady her breathing. Then she pushed open the door and stepped inside. The man in the bed was smaller than she remembered, frailer. His skin was grey, his cheeks hollow, his body wasted by disease, but his eyes were the same, dark brown like hers, the only thing he had ever given her that she kept. Emma, he said, his voice rough and weak. You came. I came, she agreed, not moving from the doorway. A young man stood from a chair in the corner. This must be Michael. He looked nothing like her, took after his mother, whoever she was. Thank you, Michael said. I did not think you would. Emma ignored him, keeping her gaze on her father. Why did you leave? She asked. No preamble. No pleasantries. Just the question that had haunted her for 18 years. Her father closed his eyes. I was young, he said, scared. Your mother wanted things I could not give her. Stability, security, a future. I felt trapped. So you just left, Emma said. You just walked away and never looked back. I looked back, her father said, opening his eyes. Every day, Emma. I looked back every day. But I was a coward. I did not know how to face what I had done. So I kept running. And by the time I realized what I had lost, it was too late. You could have called, Emma said, and she felt tears burning in her eyes. You could have written. You could have sent money. You could have done something. But you did nothing. And my mother died working herself to death to make up for your absence. I know, her father said, and he was crying now too. I know, and I am sorry. I am so sorry. I do not expect you to forgive me. I do not expect anything from you. But Emma, you have become an amazing woman. I have followed your story. I have watched you build this foundation, and I am so proud of you. You do not get to be proud of me, Emma said, her voice breaking. You do not get to claim any part of what I have become. I survived despite you, not because of you. The room was silent except for the beep of monitors and the sound of labored breathing. Michael looked like he wanted to say something, but wisely kept quiet. Emma took a shaky breath. I'm not going to pay your medical bills, she said. I am not going to rescue you, but I will make sure you do not die in pain. I will arrange for hospice care, for comfort measures. You will not suffer. But you will not get a reconciliation either. You will not get absolution. You get basic human decency, which is more than you gave me and my mother. Her father nodded, fresh tears streaming down his face. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you. Emma turned to Michael. If you try to sell this story to the press, she said coldly, if you try to use this situation for money or attention, I will make sure that every news outlet in the country knows exactly what kind of man our father was. Do you understand? Michael nodded, looking chastened. I understand. Emma walked out of that room feeling hollowed out and strangely liberated at the same time. She had faced her past, had looked her abandonment in the eye, and chosen mercy over vengeance. It did not erase the hurt. It did not undo the damage. But it gave her something she had not had before, the power to choose, the freedom to define her own terms of forgiveness. Adrian was waiting in the lobby, exactly where he said he would be. He looked up when she appeared, searching her face for answers. How do you feel? He asked. Emma thought about it. Like I just closed a door I did not know was still open, she said. Like I can finally move forward. He pulled her into his arms, and Emma let herself be held, let herself feel all the complicated emotions swirling through her. Grief and relief, anger and peace, the bittersweet ache of letting go. They drove back to the city in comfortable silence, Emma's hand in Adrian's, watching the landscape change from industrial to urban. And by the time they crossed back into Manhattan, Emma felt different, stronger, more whole. Like she had reclaimed a piece of herself she had lost a long time ago. The foundation continued to grow. The stories of the people they helped spread through word of mouth, bringing in more donations, more volunteers, more opportunities to make a difference. Emma finished her degree and officially became a licensed social worker. Adrian continued to run his businesses, but scaled back his hours, delegating more, trusting more. making space in his life for things that mattered beyond profit margins and quarterly reports. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the narrative around their relationship began to shift. They were no longer just the scandal. They were the couple who had turned pain into purpose, who had used their platform to help others, who had proven that love could be more than just a feeling. It could be a force for change. But Emma knew that the real test was still coming, because fairy tales did not exist in the real world, and happy endings had to be built, brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. 6 months after the foundation launched, Emma stood in front of a community center in the Bronx, cutting the ribbon on their first permanent satellite office. The space was small but functional, equipped with computers and private counseling rooms, and a small library of resources for job seekers and people in crisis. It was real. It was tangible. It was proof that what they were building was more than just good intentions. The crowd that gathered for the opening was diverse and genuine. There were people they had helped, people who wanted to help, community leaders who had been skeptical at first but were now cautiously optimistic. Emma looked out at their faces and felt a swell of pride so intense it almost knocked her over. Adrian stood beside her, his hand at the small of her back, steady and supportive, but letting her have this moment. She glanced at him and saw the way he was looking at her, like she was the most incredible thing he had ever seen, like he could not quite believe she was real. After the ceremony, they stayed for hours, talking to people, listening to stories, connecting with the community. An elderly woman approached Emma, taking her hands in weathered, calloused palms that reminded Emma of her mother's hands. "You are doing good work," the woman said. "Real work, the kind that changes lives. Do not let anyone make you doubt that." Emma felt tears well up. "Thank you," she said. "That means everything." As they drove back to Manhattan that evening, Emma felt a contentment settling over her that she had never experienced before. Not happiness exactly, because life was still complicated and messy and full of challenges, but contentment. The feeling of being exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do, with exactly the right person beside her. "Adrian," she said as they crossed the bridge, the city lights reflecting off the water below them. "I need to tell you something." He glanced at her, a hint of concern in his eyes. "Okay, I love you," Emma said. "I know I have said it before, but I do not think I ever really understood what it meant until now. I do not love you because you are rich or powerful, or because you can give me things. I love you because you see me, because you challenge me, because you make me want to be better, because you let me be strong and vulnerable at the same time. Because when I am with you, I feel like I can do anything." Adrian pulled the car over, right there on the bridge, and turned to face her fully. "Emma Torres," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You are the bravest, most compassionate, most infuriating woman I have ever met. You turned my world upside down and made me question everything I thought I knew about myself. You refused to let me hide. You refused to let me buy my way out of feeling. You made me human again, and I love you so much it terrifies me." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Emma's breath caught. "I was going to wait," Adrian said. "I had this whole plan. A fancy restaurant, a perfectly timed moment, all the romance you deserve. But I realize now that we have never been about perfect moments. We have been about real ones. Messy ones. Complicated ones. So I'm asking you now here, on a bridge in the middle of traffic with no audience and no script. Emma Torres, will you marry me?" Emma looked at the ring, a simple diamond set in platinum. Elegant and understated and perfect. Then she looked at Adrian, this man who had started as an impossible fantasy and become the most real thing in her life. "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, of course, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and they kissed there in the stopped car while horns honked around them and other drivers yelled at them to move. And Emma thought that this was exactly right, that their love had never been quiet or easy or conventional. It had been loud and difficult and utterly their own, and she would not have had it any other way. The engagement made headlines, of course, but the reaction was different this time. There were still critics, still people who questioned their motives and their compatibility. But there were also supporters, people who had followed their journey and believed in what they were building, people who saw their relationship not as a scandal but as a story of perseverance and growth. Jenna threw Emma a small engagement party at a restaurant in Brooklyn, inviting the people who actually mattered. Not celebrities or business moguls, but friends and colleagues and the people from the foundation. Emma's Aunt Patricia came down from Boston, bringing homemade cookies and embarrassing stories from Emma's childhood. Michael even reached out tentatively to offer congratulations. Their father had passed away 2 weeks earlier, quietly and without fanfare. Emma had sent flowers to the funeral but had not attended. Some wounds, she had learned, did not need to be reopened to be healed. As the party wound down and Emma stood on the restaurant's rooftop patio, looking out at the Brooklyn skyline, Adrian came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "Happy?" he asked. Terrified, Emma admitted. "But yes, happy good," he said. "Because I have a confession to make." Emma turned in his arms to face him. "What confession?" "I am terrified too," Adrian said. "I am terrified of messing this up, of disappointing you, of not being the man you deserve. But Emma, I am also more certain of this of us than I have ever been of anything in my life, and that terrifies me most of all, because I have something to lose now, someone to lose, and the thought of a life without you is unbearable." "Then do not lose me," Emma said simply. "Choose me every day, even when it is hard, even when we fight, even when the world is against us. Just keep choosing me." "I will," Adrian promised. "Every single day for the rest of my life." And as they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, the city sprawling below them, and the future stretching out ahead like an unwritten book, Emma realized that this was what love looked like in the real world. Not perfect, not easy, not a fairy tale with a guaranteed happy ending, but real, raw, worth fighting for, worth everything. The wedding was set for early spring, in a small garden venue upstate, far from the chaos of the city and the prying eyes of cameras. Emma had insisted on keeping it intimate, just 50 people who actually mattered to them. No spectacle, no performance. Just a celebration of love between two people who had fought hard to get here. But 3 weeks before the ceremony, everything nearly fell apart one final time. It started with a business deal. One of Adrian's oldest competitors, a man named Richard Hastings, who had spent years trying to undermine Adrian's companies, made a move that threatened everything. He had quietly been buying up shares in one of Adrian's major ventures, building a coalition of investors who were unhappy with Adrian's recent decisions to prioritize ethics over pure profit. The takeover attempt came out of nowhere, swift and brutal, designed to force Adrian out of his own company. Emma found him in his home office at 2 in the morning, surrounded by paperwork and financial reports, his eyes red-rimmed from exhaustion and stress. "Come to bed," she said softly from the doorway. "I cannot," Adrian said, not looking up. "If I do not figure this out, I am going to lose everything I built. 20 years of work, Emma, gone." She crossed the room and gently took the papers from his hands. "Adrian, look at me." He finally met her gaze, and she saw the fear there. The same fear she had seen in the hotel suite that first night, when he had been raw and vulnerable and human. "Tell me what is happening," Emma said. "All of it." Adrian took a shaky breath. "Hastings has leveraged the board against me. He is arguing that my focus on the foundation, on ethical business practices, on anything other than maximum profit, makes me a liability. He has convinced enough shareholders that he can force a vote. If I lose, I am out. Not just out of the company, out of everything. My reputation, my credibility, my ability to fund the foundation. All of it." Emma felt her stomach drop. "Can you fight it?" "I can try," Adrian said, "but it would require me to make promises I do not want to make. To scale back the foundation, to return to the ruthless business practices that made me successful in the first place, to become the man I used to be, the man I swore I would never be again." "Then do not," Emma said immediately. Adrian looked at her like she had lost her mind. "Emma, if I do not fight this, I lose everything." "No," Emma said firmly. "You do not lose everything. You lose money. You lose power. You lose status. But Adrian, those things were never who you are. Not the man I fell in love with. Not the man you have become. If you go back to being that person, if you sacrifice everything we have built together just to keep a company, then we both lose. We lose each other. You're asking me to just give up? To let Hastings win. I'm asking you to choose what actually matters, Emma said. I'm asking you to remember why we started the foundation in the first place. Not as a side project, not as a PR move, but as a mission, as a way to change lives. If you have to choose between being rich and being good, choose good. We will figure out the rest. Adrian stared at her for a long moment, and Emma could see the war happening behind his eyes. This was everything he had worked for, everything he had built. Walking away would mean admitting defeat. It would mean letting his enemy win. It would mean losing the empire he had spent 2 decades constructing, but it would also mean staying true to the person he had become. The person Emma had helped him rediscover. You are right, he said finally, and his voice was hollow. You are right, but Emma, I am terrified. I have been this person, this businessman, this empire builder for so long. I do not know who I am without it. Then let us find out together, Emma said, pulling him into her arms. Let us build something new, something that is actually ours. The next morning, Adrian called an emergency board meeting. Emma insisted on going with him, sitting in the back of the conference room as he faced down the men and women who were ready to vote him out. I am not going to fight you, Adrian said, his voice steady and clear. If you believe that Richard Hastings can run this company better than I can, then vote him in. I will not make promises I cannot keep, just to maintain control. I will not sacrifice my values for market share. And I will not become the kind of leader who prioritizes profit over people. There was a stunned silence in the room. Hastings, sitting at the far end of the table with a smug smile on his face, leaned forward. So you are just going to surrender, he said. After everything you built, you are just going to walk away. Adrian met his gaze without flinching. I am not surrendering, he said. I am choosing. There is a difference. I am choosing to be the kind of man who can sleep at night. The kind of man who can look at himself in the mirror and not feel ashamed. The kind of man who is worthy of the woman sitting in the back of this room. He glanced at Emma, and she felt tears prick her eyes. You can have the company, Adrian continued, turning back to Hastings. You can have the profits and the power and the prestige. But you will never have what I have. You will never have a purpose beyond yourself. You will never have love that challenges you to be better. You will never have the courage to walk away from something that is destroying you. With that, Adrian stood and walked out of the boardroom. Emma followed, her heart pounding, not sure if they had just made the bravest decision of their lives or the most foolish. They drove home in silence, the weight of what had just happened settling over them. When they finally reached the penthouse, Adrian went straight to the window, staring out at the city he had conquered and was now leaving behind. I do not know what happens now, he said quietly. I do not know how we are going to fund the foundation without my income from the company. I do not know if I just destroyed everything. Emma came to stand beside him, taking his hand in hers. We will figure it out, she said. We always do. Over the next few days, the news of Adrian's departure spread through the business world like wildfire. Some praised his integrity. Others called him a fool. The financial press had a field day, speculating about his future, his net worth, his relevance. Adrian took it all with a quiet dignity that Emma found both heartbreaking and inspiring. But then something unexpected happened. The foundation's donors did not disappear. In fact, donations increased. People who had been watching their journey, who had been moved by their story, who believed in what they were building, stepped up. Small donations flooded in from people who had never given to charity before. Larger donations came from ethical investors who wanted to support a different kind of capitalism. And then, 3 days after Adrian walked away from his company, he got a call from an unexpected source. A coalition of progressive investors who had been watching his work with the foundation offered him a deal. They wanted to back a new kind of venture capital firm, one that invested in businesses that prioritized social impact alongside profit. They wanted Adrian to lead it. It would not make him as wealthy as he had been before, but it would give him purpose. It would let him use his expertise to build something meaningful. And it would provide sustainable funding for the foundation. Adrian took the meeting, brought Emma with him, and by the end of the day, they had the framework for a new beginning. That night, lying in bed with Emma's head on his chest, Adrian said, I was so afraid of losing everything that I almost lost the only thing that actually mattered. What changed? Emma asked. You did, Adrian said. You made me see that having everything means nothing if you are not the person you want to be. You taught me that integrity is not a luxury. It is a necessity. And, Emma, I would rather be broke and true to myself than rich and hollow. Emma lifted her head to look at him, seeing the man she had fallen in love with more clearly than ever before. You are never going to be broke, she said with a small smile. You are too smart for that, but I am proud of you for choosing this. For choosing us always, Adrian said, kissing her forehead. I will always choose us. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind of preparation and adjustment. Adrian launched his new firm with a small team of like-minded professionals. Emma expanded the foundation's programs, opening 2 more satellite offices in underserved neighborhoods. They worked side by side, building a life that was infinitely more complicated and infinitely more satisfying than anything they had imagined. Jenna was Emma's maid of honor, of course, standing by her side through dress fittings and vendor meetings and moments of panic when Emma wondered if she was actually ready for this. Ready to commit to forever with a man whose world was so different from hers, whose past was so complicated, whose future was so uncertain. But every time doubt crept in, Emma would look at Adrian and remember why she was doing this. Not for the fairy tale, not for the security, but for the partnership, for the way they challenged each other and supported each other and made each other better, for the love that was real and messy and worth fighting for. The day of the wedding dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect spring morning that felt like a gift. Emma got ready in a small cottage on the grounds of the venue, surrounded by Jenna and her Aunt Patricia and a handful of other women who had been part of her journey. The dress was simple, ivory lace with long sleeves and a flowing skirt, elegant without being ostentatious. Emma looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. Not the performative happiness of someone trying to convince the world they were fine, but the real kind. The kind that came from knowing exactly who you were and where you belonged. You ready? Jenna asked, squeezing her hand. I am, Emma said, and meant it with every fiber of her being, and ceremony took place in a garden overlooking a lake, with trees budding green and flowers just beginning to bloom. Now there was no grand entrance, no orchestra, no elaborate production. Just Emma walking down a simple aisle lined with white chairs toward the man who was waiting for her, with tears already streaming down his face. Adrian looked at her like she was the only person in the world. Like everything they had been through, every obstacle they had overcome, every moment of doubt and fear and struggle, had all been worth it to arrive at this moment. The officiant, a judge who was an old friend of Adrian's and had watched their journey from the beginning, spoke about love not as a feeling but as a choice, about 2 people deciding every single day to show up for each other, to be honest with each other, to fight for each other and with each other and alongside each other. When it came time for the vows, Adrian went first. His voice was steady but thick with emotion. Emma, he said, I was lost before I met you. I had everything the world says you are supposed to want, and I had never felt more empty. You walked into my life by accident, and you changed everything. You refused to let me hide. You refused to let me buy my way out of feeling. You demanded that I be real even when real was painful. You taught me that vulnerability is not weakness, that love is not possession, that the best version of myself is the one I become when I am with you. I promise to choose you every day. I promise to see you, truly see you for exactly who you are. I promise to grow with you, to change with you, to build a life with you that is defined not by what we have, but by who we are. I love you, Emma Torres, and I will spend the rest of my life proving it. Emma was crying openly now, not caring that her makeup was running or that everyone was watching. When it was her turn, she took a shaky breath and began. Adrian, I came into your life with nothing. No money, no connections, no power, just myself. And you looked at me and saw something worth knowing, worth loving, worth fighting for. You could have had anyone. You could have chosen easy, but you chose complicated. You chose real. You chose me. And in doing so, you taught me that I was worth choosing, that my value is not determined by my bank account or my job title or my ability to fit into spaces that were not made for me. You taught me that love is not about changing yourself to be acceptable to someone else. It is about finding someone who loves you enough to grow alongside you. I promise to challenge you. I promise to support you. I promise to be your partner, your equal, your home. I love you, Adrian Wolf, and I will spend the rest of my life building something beautiful with you. They exchanged rings, simple gold bands engraved with each other's initials. And when the judge finally said, "You may kiss your bride," Adrian pulled Emma into his arms and kissed her like they were the only two people in the world. The reception was joyful and intimate, filled with laughter and dancing and speeches that made everyone cry and laugh in equal measure. Jenna gave a toast about watching Emma transform from a scared, exhausted girl working 3 jobs into a confident, compassionate woman who had changed thousands of lives. Adrian's former business partner, one of the few who had stood by him through the transition, spoke about watching Adrian rediscover his humanity. But the moment that Emma would remember forever came late in the evening, when the sun was setting and the party was winding down. She and Adrian stood by the lake, watching the water turn golden pink in the fading light, his arms wrapped around her from behind. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I am thinking about that first night," Emma said. "When I walked into your suite by mistake. When I saw you and thought you were the most terrifying person I had ever met. I never could have imagined this. Any of this, neither could I," Adrian admitted. "I was so convinced that I was meant to be alone. That letting anyone in was too dangerous, too risky. And then you showed up and proved me wrong about everything." Emma turned in his arms to face him. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Choosing this path? Choosing me? Never," Adrian said fiercely. "Not for a single second. Emma, you are the best decision I ever made. The only one that actually mattered." They kissed as the sun set, as their guests began to drift away, as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. And Emma felt a peace settle over her that she had never known before. Not because everything was perfect, not because all their problems were solved, but because she knew with absolute certainty that whatever came next, they would face it together. The months that followed the wedding were a continuation of the journey they had started. The foundation continued to grow, touching more lives, making more of a difference. Emma's satellite offices became hubs for their communities, places where people could come, not just for financial assistance, but for job training, mental health support, and connection. The work was hard and often heartbreaking, but it was real. It mattered. Adrian's new firm was successful in ways that had nothing to do with profit margins. They invested in companies that were trying to solve real problems: clean energy, affordable housing, education technology, healthcare innovation, and they did it in ways that valued the people doing the work, not just the returns they generated. Together, Emma and Adrian became something they had never been separately. They became partners in the truest sense of the word, equals, collaborators, two people building something bigger than themselves. But the real test of their love came not in the grand gestures or the public moments, but in the small everyday choices. The morning Adrian woke up before dawn to make Emma coffee before a big presentation. The evening Emma cancelled her own plans to sit with Adrian through a difficult business decision. The nights they stayed up talking through their fears and dreams and the 1,000 tiny concerns that made up a life. It was in those moments that Emma understood what love actually meant. Not the fireworks and passion of the beginning, though those were still there, but the steady, quiet certainty of knowing that you had found your person, the one who would see you at your worst and love you anyway, the one who would challenge you to be better while accepting exactly who you were. 1 year after their wedding, Emma stood in front of a packed auditorium, preparing to give a keynote speech at a national conference on poverty and social services. She had been terrified when she first got the invitation, convinced she was not qualified, not eloquent enough, not important enough. But Adrian had looked at her and said, "You have lived this. You have survived it and transcended it. Your voice matters more than anyone else's." Now, looking out at hundreds of faces, social workers and community organizers, and people who had dedicated their lives to helping others, Emma took a deep breath and began. "My name is Emma Wolf," she said, and the name still felt strange on her tongue, like wearing someone else's shoes. But it was hers now. She had chosen it, just like she had chosen everything else about this life. 2 years ago, I was a housekeeper at a luxury hotel working 3 jobs, one crisis away from homelessness. Today I am standing in front of you, as the co-founder of an organization that has helped over 5,000 families. And I want to tell you that both of those things are true. Both of those things matter. I am not successful because I stopped being poor. I am successful because I refuse to let poverty define my worth. She talked for 30 minutes, telling her story, sharing the lessons she had learned, challenging the audience to rethink their assumptions about poverty and dignity and what it meant to help people. When she finished, the room erupted in a standing ovation that left her breathless and humbled. Adrian was waiting backstage, his eyes shining with pride. "You were incredible," he said, pulling her into his arms. "I was terrified," Emma admitted. "You were perfect," he insisted. "Emma, do you realize what you just did? You stood in front of hundreds of professionals and spoke your truth. You owned your story. You changed minds." Emma let herself sink into his embrace, feeling the truth of his words settle into her bones. She had come so far from that scared girl in the hotel uniform. She had become someone she barely recognized. Someone stronger, braver, more certain of her place in the world. That night, lying in their bed in the home they had bought together in Brooklyn, a brownstone with a garden where Emma planted vegetables and flowers, she turned to Adrian and said, "I want to do more." "More?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Emma, you are already doing more than most people could dream of." "I know," she said. "But Adrian, there are so many people who need help. So many stories like mine that never get heard. I want to write a book. I want to tell my story, our story, in a way that helps people understand what poverty actually looks like, what it feels like, and what it takes to survive it." Adrian was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "Then do it," he said. "Write the book. Tell the story. Change more lives. Will you help me?" Emma asked. "Always," Adrian said. "But Emma, this is your story. Your voice. I will support you, but this needs to be yours." And so Emma began to write. Late at night, after her work at the foundation was done, early in the morning before the world woke up, she poured her heart onto the page. She wrote about her childhood, about her mother's death, about the crushing weight of poverty and the shame that came with it. She wrote about meeting Adrian, about falling in love despite every reason not to, about the scrutiny and judgment and the fight to build something real. She wrote about pain and hope and the messy, complicated reality of loving someone across a class divide. She wrote about the foundation and the people they had helped and the lives that had been changed. She wrote about the ongoing struggle to balance personal happiness with public service, to maintain boundaries while staying open, to grow without losing yourself. The book took 18 months to write, and when it was finally done, Emma felt like she had run a marathon. She was exhausted and exhilarated and terrified of what people would think. But she was also proud. She had told her truth. She had claimed her story. The book was published on a Tuesday in October, and by Friday it was on the bestseller list. People connected with Emma's honesty, her refusal to sanitize her experiences or present herself as anything other than a flawed, complicated human being trying her best. Reviews praised her courage and her compassion. Readers sent letters and emails sharing their own stories, thanking her for making them feel seen. Adrian read every single review, every message, and he would share them with Emma over breakfast, his eyes bright with pride. "You did this," he would say. "You changed the conversation." "We did this," Emma would correct him, "together, and that was the truth." Everything they had built, everything they had become, had been a collaboration, a partnership. Two people choosing each other over and over again, even when it was hard, even when the world told them it was impossible. 3 years after they first met, Emma and Adrian stood together in the garden of their Brooklyn brownstone, hosting a dinner for the foundation's board and key supporters. The evening was warm and golden, the kind of perfect summer night that felt like a gift. Emma moved through the crowd, greeting people, sharing updates, feeling at home in a way she never had before. At one point, she caught Adrian's eye across the garden. He was talking to a donor, but when he saw her looking, he smiled. That smile that was just for her. The one that said, "I see you, I know you, I love you." Emma smiled back, feeling her heart swell with a contentment so profound it almost hurt. This was not the life she had imagined for herself. It was better. More complicated, more challenging, more real. As the evening wound down and the last guests departed, Emma and Adrian sat together on their porch steps, watching the fireflies dance in the growing darkness. "Are you happy?" Adrian asked, the same question he had asked her so many times before. Emma thought about it, about the journey that had brought them here, about the girl she had been and the woman she had become, about the love that had transformed them both. "Yes," she said simply, "I am happy. Not because everything is perfect, but because this is real, because we built this together, because even on the hard days I know I have you. And that is everything." Adrian kissed her temple, and they sat in comfortable silence, two people who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances and built something that would last. Not because it was easy, but because it was worth it. The city hummed around them, millions of lives being lived, millions of stories being written. And Emma thought about all the people they had helped, all the lives they had touched, all the possibilities they had opened. She thought about the scared girl who had walked into the wrong hotel room and found her entire world changed. She thought about the journey from there to here, every painful step, every impossible choice, every moment of doubt and fear and courage. And she knew that she would not change a single thing. Because this life, messy and complicated and utterly imperfect, was hers, theirs, built not from fairy tales but from real choices, real love, real commitment to being better together than they could ever be apart. Emma Torres had walked through the wrong door and found everything she never knew she needed. And Adrian Wolfe had finally discovered that the things that mattered most could not be bought or controlled or conquered. They could only be chosen, nurtured, protected. Love, purpose, partnership, truth. These were the things that built a life worth living. And together they had built something that would endure, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. And that was more than enough.